Have you ever found yourself in a moment when you're at home, maybe at the end of a long day or even on a quiet weekend, and instead of feeling relaxed, you start to noticing all the small ways your home and your surroundings aren't quite giving you what they thought they would? Because for a lot of homeowners in Toronto, the realization doesn't happen all at once, but rather builds gradually over time as you start to feel the limits of your space, the constant movement around you, and the pressure that comes with maintaining a lifestyle in a city that never really slows down. What happens is that you adapt to it for years, telling yourself that this is just a part of living in a major city, until eventually the question shifts from trying to make it work to wondering whether there's a better way to live altogether. And that's usually the point where people begin exploring places outside the city, not because they're giving something up, but because they're starting to think more intentionally about what they actually want their day-to-day life to feel like. Hi, I'm Elroy Brower, your local real estate broker, and the creator of Living in Barrie, Ontario and Cottage Country. And I help people make informed moves, not rushed ones, especially when they're transitioning out of fast-paced urban markets like Toronto into communities that offer a different kind of lifestyle. So in this video, we're going to walk through why more families and retirees are choosing Springwater and what it makes it stand out compared to Toronto, and how to figure out whether this kind of move actually fits your life practical, long-term way. And if you stay until the end, I'm also going to share a bonus tip that most people overlook when leaving the city, and it can make a significant difference in how confident and comfortable you feel after making the move. When people stop asking, where should I live, and start asking, how do I want to live? One of the biggest changes I've ever seen over the past few years is that buyers are no longer making decisions based purely on location in the traditional sense, where being closer to downtown automatically meant a better lifestyle. Because what people are realizing now is that convenience does not always equal quality of life. I've worked with homeowners who spent years building their lives in Toronto, and for a long time that made perfect sense because everything was within reach. Opportunities were abundant, and the city offered a certain level of energy that supported the phase of life. But eventually, when something begins to shift, especially when your priorities change and you start valuing things like space, quiet, and control over your time, much more than proximity to the core. For some, that shift comes from working remotely more often and realizing they no longer need to be in the city every day. While for others, it comes from raising a family and recognizing that the environment around them plays a much bigger role than they initially thought. And for many retirees, it simply comes down to wanting a lifestyle that feels more relaxed, more private, and more aligned with how they want to spend their time moving forward. When those questions start to take priority, people begin comparing not just homes, but entire lifestyles, and that's where a place like Springwater tends to stand out in a way that's very different from what they've been used to. Now, as soon as buyers start exploring Springwater, the first thing that typically stands out is not just the homes themselves, but the overall value they're getting compared to what they're used to in Toronto. More space for the money changes the way you experience daily living. One of the most immediate differences people notice when they look at Springwater is how far their budget goes in terms of actual livable space, especially when compared to Toronto, where a significant portion of your purchase price is tied up to location rather than the size or functionality of the home. In Springwater, buyers often find themselves looking at larger detached homes, more expansive lots, and properties that offer a level of privacy that is simply not achievable in most urban neighborhoods. And this shift does more than improve numbers on paper. It changes how people interact with their home on a daily basis. Because instead of constantly working around space limitations, they begin to experience a level of flexibility that supports their lifestyle more naturally. Families have room for children to grow and play without feeling restricted. Professionals working from home can create dedicated workspaces that don't interfere with living areas. And retirees can enjoy their surroundings without feeling like they've downsized into something smaller or less comfortable. As buyers begin to process that shift in space and value, the next thing that becomes very noticeable is how different the pace of life feels compared to what they've actually been used to in the city. A slower pace of life that feels more manageable and less reactive. One of the most consistent themes I hear from people moving to Springwater is that the change in pace is something they didn't fully appreciate until they experienced it firsthand. Because in a city like Toronto, there's a constant sense of movement that affects everything from your commute to your daily routine. Springwater offers a very different rhythm. Traffic is lighter, noise levels are significantly reduced, and the overall environment feels less rushed. which allows people to approach their day with a greater sense of control and balance. What this creates is not just a physical change, but a mental one as well, where homeowners feel less pressure to constantly keep up with everything happening around them, more freedom to focus on what actually matters in their daily lives. As that pace begins to shift, another element naturally becomes part of the conversation, and that's how the environment itself supports a more balanced lifestyle. Living closer to nature becomes a natural part of your routine. Another major reason people are drawn to Springwater is the way outdoor living is integrated into the area, rather than being something that requires planning or effort to access. In Toronto, green space is often limited, shared, and sometimes crowded, which can make it feel like an occasional escape, rather than a consistent part of your lifestyle. In Springwater, the presence of trails, open land, and natural surroundings means that being outside becomes something that fits easily into your daily routine, whether that's going for a walk, spending time in your yard, or simply enjoying a quieter, less congested environment. For many buyers, especially those who spend more time at home, this connection to nature becomes a significant factor in their overall well-being inside of Saskatchewan where they live. When you combine more space, a calmer pace, and access to nature, the next thing that naturally comes into focus is how this environment supports family life. Families are choosing Springwater for stability, space, and a stronger sense of community. For families, the decision to move to Springwater is often about creating an environment that feels more supportive and less overwhelming, both in terms of physical space and overall atmosphere. The larger homes provide flexibility as children grow. The quieter streets create a safer and more relaxed setting, and the lower density contributes to a stronger sense of community, where neighbors are more familiar and connected. What this means is that families are not just upgrading their home, they are improving the environment in which their day-to-day life unfolds, which can have a lasting impact on how comfortable and settled they feel over time. At the same time, this shift is not limited to families, because retirees are also finding that Springwater offers something that aligns closely with what they are looking for in the next stage of life. Retirees are prioritizing comfort, privacy, and a more relaxed environment. For many retirees, the goal is to simplify life without sacrificing the comfort and the space they've grown accustomed to. And this is where Springwater presents a compelling alternative to more urban downsizing options. Instead of moving to smaller, high-density properties, many retirees are choosing to maintain a level of space while reducing noise, congestion, and overall pressure that comes with city living. They gain privacy, a quieter environment, and a pace that feels more aligned with how they want to spend their time, while still remaining within reasonable distance of amenities in nearby areas like Barrie. Before making a move like this, there's one final consideration that can make a significant difference in how successful the transition feels. Make sure the move supports your real routine, not just the idea of change. One of the most important things to think about when leaving Toronto is not just what you're gaining, but how your day-to-day life will function in the new environment. Because it's easy to focus on the benefits of more space and a quieter setting without fully considering how your routine will adapt. When buyers take the time to evaluate how they work, how often they travel, and how they spend a typical day, they are much more likely to choose a location that feels right long-term rather than simply appealing in the moment. So, is leaving Toronto for Springwater the right move? For many families and retirees, it can be a very strong option, especially if you're looking for more space, a quieter lifestyle, and a more balanced day-to-day experience. But like any major decision, it ultimately comes down to how well the move aligns with your needs, your routine, and your long-term goals. I'm Elroy Brower, and I help people make confident real estate decisions when transitioning into Barrie, Springwater, and the surrounding communities. If you're thinking about making a move and want a clear understanding of what that could look like for your situation, you can use the link in the description to book your free consultation. And if this video helped you, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future insights on living in Barrie and Cottage country. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.